So I am here with Grayson and Cameron, and we are talking about efficiency this morning. I've known Grayson. How long now, Grayson? Have we known each other? 5 years?
Man, yeah, probably 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So we met when I was doing entrepreneur in residence work at ASU. Grayson had a startup tech company that I advised a little bit for, and we spent some time together, really, talking about business, learning about how to grow businesses. And we still keep in touch to this day because efficiency is something that Grayson is really big on. And Grayson, maybe you can tell everybody a little bit about your sort of background, your engineer and what all you've done.
Yeah, so my background by training is manufacturing engineer. And traditionally that's put into a sense of factories and production. But when you think about it, really everything is a process. We have processes in the office, and where we do at work, and when we're learning at school, everything is a process and can be very inefficient or it can be very efficient. And so my background in that has been traditionally in the medical device industry. But as you said, I've taken that to start another company where we help small businesses do that, essentially, where we can help them realize that they are wasting a lot of time and money in processes they might not realize, and we can help them improve that in their production, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, and that brings me to Cameron, because Cameron is your partner in Workhorse. And Cameron, tell us a little bit about your background.
So my background is generally in software development. I got my degree at ASU in computer science and have spent the last several years as a software engineer. And specifically for the last few years, I've actually worked as a quality assurance test engineer. And that's been really a really incredible thing for me, because it's helped me kind of see that there are so many areas and so many different places where quality isn't necessarily taken into the highest consideration. And so you take that into kind of the sense of what a business can do. And it's not necessarily just software related. It's in their processes. It's in their day-to-day task work. There are certain inefficiencies. There are certain things that could be done better. And so that has been really, really cool to be able to take what I've learned as a software engineer and apply it into helping these businesses become more efficient, identifying those problems and identifying the best solutions for them.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense. And it's why we're here chatting today, because anybody that, follows me knows what I do. It's all about lean management, right? It's about finding the best approach. I talk a lot about the difference. There's only two forces you can affect in your business on a daily basis. One is energy. Energy is something that, we try to obtain through caffeine or through energy drinks or through good sleep or working out. We try to have energy so that we can dedicate it to things. The other thing that we can do is we can hire people and we can mine energy from them. And that's on the one side of things. We can use energy to solve problems, but there's another way of doing this, and that is by changing your approach. Approach the problem differently. Elon Musk, I wrote an article about this recently. He can be the CEO of, I don't know how many companies. I know we have SpaceX, Tesla, Solar City, Boring Company. He's got the mind. Have you seen the monkey video, by the way? Oh my goodness, there's this monkey video. What is it called? Neuralink, right? And he's the CEO of like 5 multi-billion-dollar companies, innovating in every space imaginable. He still has time to smoke weed with Joe Rogan and to date pop stars. It's like, and he's on all these red carpet gala things. And it's like, how does this guy find the time? Well, it's because he doesn't approach it from an energy perspective. He approaches it from an approach perspective. His approach to things is different. And if you follow what Elon Musk talks about when he's talking about his business, when they find a refined approach, a different way of doing things, he immediately starts looking for the next different way of doing things. He never is satisfied that the solution that he's found is the final solution. And I think that's so important. And it's important when we are in the midst of the Great Resignation, where people are struggling with hiring, where profitability is relatively high, but efficacy is really, really low from what I've seen. And we've got to make that switch. And I think there's so many simple ways to do that. And that's why I wanted to chat with you guys today, because we've been talking more and more. Grayson and I sat down right before Christmas and started talking about how do we collaborate on some of these things, because some of these solutions are so simple, but they do take time and they take expertise. I was with a friend just about a week ago who's a consultant that said over the holidays, he spent 60 hours automating his process, learning about webhooks, understanding how Zapier's work, setting up HubSpot, getting everything to work, seamlessly with each other. So when he enters data in one place, it automatically goes through the whole entire thing, and it sets up an email campaign for the next year, and it does all of these reminders, and it drops things on his calendar, and it does all these things. And he said, look, I spent all this time and I'm saving 6 hours on every single new customer I'm onboarding, and I'm bringing on a couple customers a month. So it's a huge savings. And I said to him, was it worth it? And he's like, absolutely, it was worth it. And I'm like, would it have been easier to just pay somebody to do it? And he's like, yeah, but who do I pay that I can give them access to my stuff and they can set it all up, and the next day I come in and it's right there? Instead, we go to YouTube and we do tutorial videos. I'm learning a piece of software right now. It's called Wondershare Filmora. I've decided I'm going to start processing my own video clips because I keep sending them off and it takes 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, if I want to talk about something that happened in the news today, I can't wait 2 or 3 days. So I'm spending last night, I spent most of the night on YouTube watching other people do it so that I can learn. So those are the things that we want to chat about here. And I think there's so many stories of companies that are just inefficient. So maybe Cameron, could you give us, what do you see as sort of red flags? If you walk into a business, what tells you that they haven't yet automated their process? Is there anything in particular, or do you have to dig in more deeply?
Honestly, the first thing that you can identify with some of these businesses is that they've been doing the same thing for so long.
Yeah.
They aren't actively innovating. They've been using the same tools, the same processes, the same structure year after year after year. And right there, right away, that will tell me that there are things that they can definitely be improving on, because technology it's amazing. This day and age that we live in, there's so many cool technologies out there that can streamline so many different aspects of your business, from new customer onboarding to exit strategies for those customers, to payroll, to file structures and organizations. There's so many tools, like you mentioned Zapier, and how you can interconnect all of these different applications turn, just like a 20-minute process can be automated into a half-second process. And that time adds up day after day after day.
Absolutely.
So,
Grayson, how about you?
I was going to say, a lot of the time I don't blame them for not having done anything, because it can be very overwhelming, and you have to commit that time to do it and maybe not get a solution. And so it can be very overwhelming if you have to figure out how to learn this stuff and change your processes, and it's a huge uphill battle. And that's kind of what we're trying to offer, is we solve that problem for you. I think for me, you can go into different businesses, and I think when I see how they handle me as the customer, that's kind of a dead giveaway. Where recently I was trying to get quotes for concrete, right? I'm building an addition on my home. I needed a foundation, and I probably had to call 12 different companies, and it's like an obscure number on a website. And the first one that called me back, who happened to be the only one, was the one that got the job. Right. And so
all the time that happens. I'm going to remind me to tell a story about that afterwards, but keep going. I want to talk about that a little bit more.
And stuff like that, right? Where it doesn't take much to record or handle potential clients or onboarding or whatever it is. There are ways that we can help you do that for very cheap, but can pay dividends down the road, because everyone feels special. They feel like they're being handled, and you can pay a premium because you have the best service. So
it's so true. And right now, it is not, people aren't competing on price as much, right? It is about availability. We talked about a little bit before this, I'm doing this massive remodel at my house here. I have made lots of decisions, not based upon cost, but based upon availability of materials. For instance, I had a contractor here last week that said, well, for us to come in and set up your sunshades, we've got to put the poles in the ground, and we're 26 weeks out. So I was like, what if I get the poles put in the ground? He's like, I can have you the materials in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, great. So guess what? I happen to know a very good concrete guy. I called my concrete guy and I said, hey, are you in the area? And he's like, yeah, sure. What's up? I'm like, stop over the house. And 2 days later, we put in everything. And I emailed the guy back and he's like, how did you get this done so fast? And I'm like, look, because I didn't think about price as the deciding factor. It was about availability to me. I wanted to have the sunshades in and the misters in I don't want them in September. I'm going to need them in 3 months. And that's a really important piece. I think the automation of the leads from your customer and then taking their information and putting that into all of your other systems, so there isn't the redundancy, I think is really important. Time and time again anymore, it is about how quickly you respond. Pre-pandemic, I worked with a financial services company that did high risk loans for small businesses. And we had an average, we had set this time in stone, to Cameron's point, years ago. We were like, we want to respond to every application within 24 hours. And what we found is that we had about a 3% close rate from the applications that went into our system, people applying for credit, to people that actually signed the contract at the end. We couldn't really figure out why it was so bad. Then we decided, we really looked at our customer. We got empathetic for a minute and we said, who are our customer? Well, our customer tended to be businesses that struggled to get credit and needed it right now. They didn't need it in 24 hours. They needed it right now. So when we started asking questions of our customers as to why they didn't use us, they said exactly what Grayson just said. The first guy that called me back, I just went with him. Yeah, but we're much more competitive. Dude, the first guy that called me back, I went with him. I needed the cash. I needed it in my account this morning. That's the guy I called. We changed our process so that when you submitted, originally it was a contact form. You didn't even really submit an application. We then called you and sent, we did a little application form and we said, once submitted, we will contact you within 15 minutes. All right. Now that was a change. It changed the way our inbound had to work. It changed the way we had to work the phones, all these kind of things. But we went to an 80% close rate, from 3% to 80%, because the problem wasn't that the people needed the loan and they needed the application and the process. They needed the money and they needed it now. So we resolved that problem through automation. We did all of the things where it tickled them with the emails. If they didn't respond back, or if they didn't completely fill out the form or the application, it would start reminding them, sending them text messages 20 minutes afterwards saying, hey, Grayson, if you still need this cash, the application's not done yet. And that encouraged people to engage with us in a totally different way. And I think that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about not just bringing efficacy into your business to help your employees get more things done. That's important. But the retention and the close rate of the leads that you do get is going to go way through the roof when you bring this automation in.
Yeah, and I would say also, we help automate every part, usually except for actually performing your expertise.
Right.
Like any of those 12 companies could have laid the same foundation that I described. They all could have done just fine, but it's that they handled me quickly. They billed me quickly. They requested a Google review, which I happily gave, right? Like it's every aspect of that company just nailed it. Like and now I've given their number to like 3 different people. I'm like, these guys.
Sure. And listen, when the pandemic's over, when the construction boom starts to slow down, I can bet right now what company is going to exist on the backside of it. The company that you use, who's going to go away and blame market conditions, or, oh yeah, the business just got too competitive. It's going to be all the other all those other contractors are going to just deteriorate and go out of business because of that, because they weren't good at that customer acquisition and retention piece. There's so many companies that do it so poorly that when we do have an experience that's exceptional, we don't even question the price. It's like, we know we're paying a premium and we're happy to pay the premium because we're finally being treated like a human being, like they want our business. And I think every one of those subcontractors, if you would ask them, they wanted your business. They just didn't know how to get it. And that's what we're doing. So when we talk about automation, we're not talking about bringing in a multi-million-dollar ERP system into your business. We're talking about using off-the-shelf pieces of software that range from free, right? I mean, Google Drive is free, up to maybe $100 a month. But what I've seen, I've done multiple help desk, like Zendesk customer service integrations in the past. And I found companies find that they need to reduce their customer service staff by 50% by just implementing one of those solutions, because it's automated and it does everything for you. And it puts it all into a nice box. When you open it up on Monday morning, it's like, here's the things you need to do. It prioritizes based upon AI or based upon rules. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the basics, like calendar integrations if you're in contracting or scheduling? Maybe let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think the best way to approach this is give like kind of a small, medium, large of how we would help that. So like the first example, I would say even just the most basic is we've helped companies just establish a single page website with an automation that emails them on their own Google, like not in @gmail.com, in @workhorse.com address.
Setting up your own domain. Listen, it's crazy how many business cards I have from contractors. They all use Gmail accounts. It's like, bro, I mean, come on. Like, how do I know you're a real business? Yeah, it's $6, and you're like, you could look so much more professional, and you could win double or triple the leads just by doing that.
Yeah, so that's the very simple one. even just G Suite is probably the bare minimum, and even a simple landing page, because they all give out business cards and stuff like that. And it's like, it doesn't take much to have a single landing page with a Google My Business listing. It really doesn't take much. That would probably be the bare minimum. The middle tier, I think, we have an architectural draftsman client, and their onboarding process is a little bit unique, but it's really annoying because they have a bunch of different files they have to deal with, and they have a bunch of different templates that they have to do calculations and all this stuff and manage the city submittals and things like that. It used to take them about 30 minutes or so per new client, in which they did a record year. They had 100 houses in 8 months that they drafted for. And these are luxury multi-million-dollar homes. And now the process just gets done for them. They literally they put in the name, hit enter, and the whole file structure and template is done for them in their Google Drive and all their calculation templates and everything like that. And they didn't have to stop their work to go and do all this stuff and get distracted. They could just keep working, do their thing, and everything was set up for them. So I think that's like the middle tier, is having those out of the box solutions.
Let me interject one thing there. And I think I sort of feel like I'm technically savvy, but you just went over my head even there. I'm like, wait, you can do that with Google.
Okay, yeah.
I've had stuff map into, and I've used Google Forms to have stuff map in, but I'm like, wait a second, you need to show me how you do this afterwards. But, I think the thing that we have to remember as business owners and as people that need automation is, this is not terribly difficult. When you think about it, it isn't like you've got to go do custom coding anymore. All of these little pieces of software, the Calendly program that I use that allows people to see my calendar and put time on it and schedule time, that connects seamlessly. It takes a little bit of know-how, right? But you connect it right to your calendar. And as long as I keep my calendar updated, Calendly is updated in real time. And when Calendly schedules it and somebody selects, I wanted to do a Zoom call, guess what? It sends them the Zoom invitation. It sends them the follow-up email that says, don't forget you have a Zoom call in 10 minutes with Derek this morning. It puts it on their calendar. And I think it's easy, if you're not a technical person, to think that it's sort of magic how all of these things work, when it's really not. It's relatively basic plug and play, but it requires a little bit of expertise. It requires, sometimes when it comes to Cameron here, it requires a little bit of code, where you have to go in and you have to know, it's going to come through a little bit janky, so I have to write this little piece of code so that I can make this work. It takes somebody that knows how to do those things, but once you know how to do them, it's not difficult. So we're not talking about, it's going to cost me $10,000 to deploy. No, not at all. This is, a 4 or 5 hour engagement with a couple people that know what they're doing, that can completely and totally streamline and automate your processes very, very quickly.
The real important bit, though, is you only have to do it once.
That's
so
right.
A little bit, just a little bit of work, but once it's set up, it's done. So this architectural client that we have, it's done, it's set up, and it will run indefinitely until they decide to change it or turn it off. It's done.
And that's the other thing that Workhorse can do too, is provide that service after the sale, where it's like, hey, look, do you want to be on a maintenance contract with us? What if you bring in 3 new people and you need to onboard them and you need to show them these systems? Or what if we need training videos done on how to use these new tools? Or what if we change our process or change our sales? Like maybe we start selling a different product, or we no longer have a guarantee. You guys can just jump in and make those changes for them. And very, very simply, very, very easily, you can get a lot more things done.
Yeah, we actually do that. One of our clients is a small sprinkler systems installer. It's all they do in the Valley is install sprinklers. And they were doing it all with spreadsheets and a calendar. And he had one girl that was losing her mind. She was, his office assistant, because she couldn't keep these 2 crews busy, couldn't keep everything straight. We set them up with Jobber, and now they've tripled their business. They use the exact same girl. She's happy. And but they kept us on for a couple $100 a month because she has a question occasionally and she wants to be able to just call someone and does not want to wait for the Jobber support. And for them, that's worth it. And for us, it's really easy. We might get a phone call a month, but they're thrilled because they feel like they're always taken care of. Any issue or question they've have is done, and it's a win-win for both of us. So
yeah, well, and this is why we're collaborating now, right? Because I'm doing a lot of work in this field, or even in like my accounting gig, right? I work with the Profit Matters team, and I'm their chief revenue officer, and you do get customers where occasionally they're like, how do I get my financial system to talk to my calendar system? And how do I get these things, and instead of just going on Google and trying to figure it out yourself and getting frustrated, and there's no worse frustration, even if you're not a person that uses foul language, all it takes is a little bit of computer problems and you very quickly revert to this, like, the pits of hell. Because it's very frustrating, and it can be that way. And that's what we're collaborating on, is looking at even the customers that I work with. A lot of times I'm making recommendations to them, and I say, oh, you should really use a calendar system. You should really use, a dispatch system. You should use something like a busy that tracks time and all these kind of things. And they say, that's great. How? Like, I mean, I'm working with a client right now that's a massive, company. They don't have an IT department. I mean, they have hundreds of employees. They don't have an IT department. So that's what you all can provide. And I think in collaboration together, it's great because I can provide my level of expertise on process and all of those things that I know that you need to do as your business. But then when the work needs to get done, there's Workhorse there that we can pass that off to and say, hey, can you guys make these integrations?
And I would say that's kind of the power of our collaboration, is we are business owners as well. Yeah. We've worked in large and small corporate environments, and we have dozens of clients that are in a service-based or supplier or type company, and we can speak your language. Yeah. We can work with Derek on the process side and understand, oh, this is what these people need. This is the value added portion they need, and the non-value added portion they need automated. And instead of, I wouldn't think of us as just a bunch of software engineers, web designers that have no understanding of how the business works. Like, for the most part, we can speak your language and understand what's going on.
Well, and I think that's the cool part too, is, regardless of how much you do know or how competent you even feel you are, like, I feel like I'm pretty competent in getting things to work together, but I just came across the piece of software the other day that I'm going to subscribe to. And the first thing I said is, I'm like, I am going to have to call Grayson, because it's a little bit complicated. It's essentially a piece of software that I can take a drone out to a job site, the drone that I own. I can integrate my drone software into their drone software, and they can control the drone and fly it and get all the pictures that they need of the site. And I'm like, this is great. I love it. I sign up. And I'm like, wow, I wonder how, and I'm sure they're a little bit more technical, right? I'm like, oh boy, I have a feeling, as soon as I started looking at anytime that anybody goes to like, if I'm doing work on I work on a lot of Mac, right? And I've been on with Apple support here recently, and they're like, go to the terminal and type in these things. I'm like, what's the terminal? How to plug things together? But we're like getting into the DOS piece here. Like, that's way outside of my pay range. I would much rather pay somebody, to guide me through that process, because I don't want to screw it up. And I think that's the big piece. I also think, and I'm gonna say this a little bit tongue in cheek, but it's really, really true. I've been out consulting for many, many years, and I bring a lot of change into companies. And I always tell the CEO that some of the change that I can bring in, only I can bring in, you can't, because your reputation as a CEO or a business owner is, if you do it and it fails, everybody sort of points at you like, oh, another one of his harebrained ideas. As a consultant, I can do the work, and you can be like, hey, we hired these guys to do it. And you can throw a little bit of blame. I know it's a change, guys. I'm really sorry, but we brought in these experts, and this is the process they want us to follow. I'm with you. It seems a little bit more tedious, but they're telling us it's going to be better in a few weeks. So you can be the good guy in the equation when there's change. I have a good friend that always says, and I get a kick out of it, he says, I don't mind change as long as it never happens to me. It's like, so being able to be that a little bit of a handoff to a third party, place a little bit of the blame on them, right? And say, hey, look, these guys are doing this. We've got to do it. We got to automate. We got to update. Our customers are saying, I know it sucks, but we'll get through this together, versus them dictating, top down that you got to get it done. And so that gives a little bit of an advantage to the business owner, that they can.
If it fails, they can blame you, and if it succeeds, they can take all the credit.
They take all the credit if it succeeds, and we take all the blame if it doesn't. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it. When it's wonky or it doesn't work, they can say, well, call that Grayson and Cameron, they'll get it fixed. It gives you that ability to deflect, so you can bring change into your business without having the risk that's associated with that. And if you know much about change management and risk management go hand in hand a lot of times, because change does bring risk. You could potentially lose some people. I have told multiple business owners this, and I actually talked about it a little bit in my Lean Manager's Playbook book. But I have told CEOs that when we change a process, some people will leave. You will find afterwards that the people that leave were actually just they were the mechanical Turks of your process. They actually weren't really providing any value. All they were is that they only knew how to unplug it and plug it back in over here. Well, once we automated that process, the reason they left is because they're afraid they're going to be exposed. And I've had multiple times this has happened. I had this happen with a manufacturing company here in Tempe, where a lady had been there 30 years, and we brought in accountability, and we brought in some automation to process. And she came back to the CEO's office and said, I will not be held accountable. And she left. And he's like, what do I do? I'm like, let her go. We just automated with a $20 piece of software what she did. It would have been nice to keep her on the team, but if she's going to be resistant to this change at this level, let's move past that. And sometimes it's a lot easier to train a new person on these processes than sometimes to bring the old people up to speed. That's why it's good to automate it, though. That's why if they can see how much easier it is for them, that's where the change really happens.
Honestly, it's a lot of it's about that opportunity to bring in change also invites growth. And so from my experience as a quality assurance, actually one of my jobs is to write code and automate that QA process. And so I've adopted these tools and these practices, and I've been able to automate a large chunk of the QA process. So a developer will hand me a chunk of code, and my job as a QA is to kind of put a torture test on it to make sure that it functions properly before it goes in front of the customer or the client. And I'm working myself out of my job almost by automating it, because I've written these scripts and this code that does QA for me, so I don't have to. Yeah. And the end result is there are less errors, because human error is always a thing. The QA process happens faster, and it's more thorough. Yeah. The offset is now I don't have a job, but I don't look at it that way. Instead, it's now I have more time where I can explore other options and bring more value to the company or to the client.
Yeah. It's funny, I mentioned this term mechanical Turk earlier. Are either you familiar with the mechanical Turk concept or the company?
Never heard that before.
Okay, so mechanical Turk, actually, there's an Amazon a product called Mechanical Turk. And what essentially they do is you can take like simple data entry, or like, let's say you have a whole bunch of pictures and you need them all oriented correctly. You could upload them to the Mechanical Turk, and they then have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the globe that will do these simple tasks for a couple pennies per item. And sometimes there are people that maybe have a disability. Sometimes there are people that might be stuck at home for some reason. Maybe it's a health reason, or they could be in a third world country. And Amazon calls it the Mechanical Turk. And it goes back to a concept back during the time of, I believe it was in the late 1700s. There was a guy in Europe that created a machine that could play chess and beat anybody in the world. And it had a big Turkish man that sat on top of it with a big turban on top of his head. And it was metal, and it was, you know, it was like an animatronic kind of thing. People from around the world went and played this. There's rumors like Napoleon played against it and lost. Ben Franklin tried to play chess against this thing and lost. And eventually the guy was found out that he actually just had the grand master of the world chess player inside the machine, moving all the components around. Everybody thought, like, this is incredible what he's done. Well, it was just a guy inside of a costume. But and that's what Amazon was saying is, you can take these tasks. Yes, you can automate many of them, but maybe you don't even need to automate it. Maybe it's something as simple as scanning in documents. If there isn't a software solution, you can find somebody that you can outsource that to. I use systems like Upwork and Fiverr every single day to produce things that can't be done yet, by an automated system.
Yeah,
so
we're not always the solution there, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's about solutions, right? And that's what it really is about. It's about solutions. It's finding the solutions that are best for that business to help that business grow. And the great part about it is, from a cost perspective, it's not like you're deploying Oracle software in your business. This is, there's some subscription fees on some of these things, but some of them are totally free. So to Cameron's point, you do the work once and it's there forever. So right now you can check it out, workhorseseo.com, because that's where you guys are. How's that work?
Yeah, right now it's Workhorse SEO. We're working on a little bit of rebranding, but I would say at the time of this video, go to Workhorse SEO. We're trying to publish a bunch of ideas and helps for people to kind of, I think businesses have a lot of inefficiencies that they don't realize. Yeah. And so we're trying to write content that helps them understand what we do, because it's not obvious. You can't really search for people like us. And so we're trying to change that you can say, I need a business process consultant or business automation integrator or something like that, where they can understand, oh, I need a project management software. These guys can help me get it set up, or I need email marketing or whatever it is, and they can help me. So,
and I think that's the great combination here is there's one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to automate a process until you understand that process. I go out and talk about this all the time. It's like, look, I can't bring automation into a factory until I've leaned out and refined the process as it is, because if I don't do that, then I'll end up automating things that we shouldn't even be doing. To your point, Cameron, with QA, right? A lot of QA right now and in code, and a lot of coders work. There's coders out there. I know one in particular that tells me he has written some AI stuff that 30 of his 40 hours a week are done by a bot at his job. And he's like, I literally just sitting around watching the bot, making sure the bot's doing what I told him to do, and watching some Netflix. So, there's the point is, if you need help on that process, we can help there through our collaboration. If you just need help on the integration, and sometimes it's super easy. It's like, we use a paper calendar. Oh my God, let's get you a calendar system put in place. Sometimes it's a little bit more complex. It's like, hey, how do we get all of these things working together, and our dispatch, and should we put some GPS in our trucks, and how do we get these things working? And that's where I can come in and really help on that higher level process. So, well.